All right.
Off to game number 2. All right, everyone, welcome to game number 2 in the 8th Newcomers tournament for Off-World Trading Company. I'm Philotanic. Joining me today is NC Game Wizard for initial commentary and analysis, and we have Cordarius, Radar Contact, Shell Cheesy, and Z Ratchet. And we do have all HQs turned on this time, like we're supposed to.
Oh,
And
yes.
somebody didn't remember that last time. I'm seeing the really nice scientist spot up here in the top. What else do you see in C Game Wizard for founds?
Well, again, high electronics price is kind of pushing me away from a Nomad found. When Nomads are available, you always want to be thinking about, well, what if we did that instead? Because you get the two HQs, and that is really, really versatile.
A scientific HQ has
There
been
goes that
Radar
founded.
scientist
Contact
spot.
did find that scientist spot. They took it for $14,000 in debt, which pretty fair price, I'd say. The only problem with that
A
spot
scavenger
is they are
HQ has been
far away
founded.
from silicon and carbon. Where is the carbon?
One
A
thing to
All the way
robotic
keep
down
in
in the
HQ
mind
has
south.
been founded.
is while you are looking, while the little timer ticks down at the black market for nukes, because nukes should be the first thing you're looking at when you're thinking about
A scavenger
scavengers, first thing you're
HQ
thinking
has been
about when you're
upgraded.
being a robot, is you can see these core samples. So maybe not as far from silicon as you might think. There is a decent patch to the east there that could be really easily core sampled out. I'm seeing a 91% chance in at least 3 different spots.
A
So
scientific HQ has been upgraded.
silicon maybe not so difficult for radar contact. That's something to be thinking about on these core sample maps is what
The
is
black market
around
is
that's maybe
online.
not apparent that I can use to improve my HQ.
Right, yeah, this sand here could be silicon. Let's talk about some of the other founds. We do have two players already HQ2. Shell Cheesy going for a Crater Nomad. I'm sorry, Crater Scavenger found. Has
Yeah,
3 low carbon quarries. Went heavy in aluminum. What do you think about this one?
well, looking at it, my main concern is the aluminum. Scavenger up towards level 2 and level 3 does not get so many claims that you can generally have that aluminum, and there's not return a claim on the market, which when I go heavy into aluminum is something I'm thinking about. You get 2 return a claims for the price of the one, press the button for 2,000.
A scavenger
So,
HQ has been
in
upgraded.
this case,
Are the first HQ3 though.
yeah, well, there's that. The question is, how long are they going to need this sustained aluminum? And it might just be until they get to level 5 and put up an off-world and win the game. So it could turn out really well for them.
Cordarius also HQ2, one of our 2 robots. They're going to need to pay through that 200 electronics this
Yes.
next HQ level. Their base is set up decently. They have the 2 steel mills with the robot adjacency input
A
from the
robotics
iron going
HQ has
into a
been
single
upgraded.
electronics factory, which I'm
Z,
not too huge of a fan of. I'd rather just grab that high water and make some water money.
was Z Ratchet our player who went 1-1-1 last time?
Yes.
A
He's
scientific
doing
And
HQ
then
has
pretty
been
much the same thing
upgraded.
again. That's the definition of insanity, people.
or the definition of somebody who wasn't stream cheating.
Maybe.
Didn't hear us say. So anyway, this is V Ratchet. Unfortunately, is an example of how you shouldn't found. There are plenty of other areas on this map that have is close enough to the water, close enough to aluminum. That
Yes.
Z Ratchet one wind turbine. They did get up to HQ2, which is always good, but they do have that one wind turbine, and then power's so high.
So
They've already
you
they get
asked
2 more
me
claims.
earlier what I felt about Shell Cheesy's found, and a big part of the reason why I was as for it as I was I generally assumed that they would be reaching for
Sold.
that the medium and the lows, but it's in fact Shell Cheesy's going for that medium and that high that's just a little bit further away and is going for a single greenhouse farm. And this is one of those situations where you're just not making enough. Point 0.5 food isn't even covering Shell Cheesy's consumption of 0.6 per second. So this building is doing nothing. It's preventing some debt.
Just preventing debt. It's not helping the upgrade. Fortunately, glass is cheap. and they only need 6.9k of it, so they might be able to sell down enough water if they do it early to get that glass.
Yeah, fuel is so cheap that you could see they're kind of getting away with this. A little bit too much aluminum and a little bit too much water for right now, but I have worries. I have worries about the long-term stability of this if they don't get some electrolysis going.
Yeah, you would, or at least, well, right now you want to go for the second greenhouse farm because at least then you can make some money off of the 2 greenhouse farms.
Yeah.
Electrolysis isn't enough money at the moment
Yes.
because that's normally what you do. So the standard HQ upgrading thing is you go for your base resource, which was the 3 elemental plate, and you purchase up your silicon, your aluminum. Then you grab 1 aluminum, 1 high is enough without nukes usually, and something that makes money. Often that's water, and then so that allows you to maybe go into farms in HQ3. That being said, they are the first upgrade HQ4, so they're not suffering too much.
Even with that
Just
glass shortage too, that is a painful, painful thing for our glass-consuming HQs.
now, Radar Contact is could be making great money off of these farms if they sold them. They've had no reason to sell them as nobody has been producing enough
Yes.
food just yet to worry about it. But now, Shell Cheesy getting their second greenhouse farm online, they'll soon be able to sell food. So this is where Radar Contact should be thinking to themselves, let's cut the price of food right underneath Shell Cheesy just
Yeah.
after they went and moved into it.
Radar is a massive cash advantage right now, even if they are not in the HQ
We
advantage.
do have that early geotherm, which I did like in HQ3. That's kept them their debt in check. It's actually been paying off some of their debt. They also made a long-term play by going into this Pleasure Dome with pretty decent adjacency. Not very happy about the auction for the Pleasure Dome, though.
Yes.
Always annoying when the auction AI says, hey, that's a really good building you placed down. Why don't I force you to spend more on it?
That's just more incentive for Radar, though, because there's a couple things they could do. They can't actually get the claim back because they've put a goon squad on it. So, instead, if they do take this auction, that's actually a spot for a different advanced building. You put down a patent lab, you can actually improve that Pleasure Dome even further with virtual reality. Optimization Center would be fine. There are tons of ways that you could make that auction work for you. It doesn't have to be the end of the world, but maybe letting it go for 28,000 was the right move. I
Yeah,
I
okay.
support that.
Shell Cheesy. Okay, no, never mind. That's a mutinied geothermal plant. Never mind. 2 geotherms can be a little bit much for scavengers simply because you don't have so many claims, but power's been so high for so long. They're going to pay through all their debt. They're going to start earning power money. Should be fine for them.
Yes, you can see the price on fuel has just been linearly going up as shipping has continued to not be dealt with by anyone, really.
No, this would be a good time for Radar Contact to expand over here into some fuel
Yes.
just to the right or left of their colony, whichever way they'd want. There's really not much difference in shipping costs between those 2 locations. But you have those 3 claims that they're just sitting here.
One
So
thing to
great
consider,
time to move.
Shell Cheesy is in no debt whatsoever. So this fuel isn't actually doing anything for them. It's costing them a little bit of cash, I suppose, but somehow they're making up for it in just straight up power money right now.
There we go. 3 electrolysis reactors coming out for Radar Contact. They're also going to go into a fast teleportation. Decently fast HQ4 makes sense when fuel's this high to go for teleportation first. Another great patent to pick up, nanotechnology. Nanotechnology allows you to get 100% of your resources back when you delete a building.
Yes.
It's frankly overpowered.
Yes. I consider nanotechnology to be the bow on top of the patent Christmas present.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get that, you've got everything that you need to maybe even in a competitive game pull out a surprise upset just because you had resources in your buildings that weren't being considered into your cash plus resources value until you deleted them.
Yeah, no, it's always nice to delete somebody. I actually lost the game on a stream a couple weeks ago because I didn't delete things fast enough.
Ah, yes.
A new claim is available for option.
Most of the
radar
time,
contact
Off-Road's
is
not
setting them,
Upgraded.
a reaction game. Sorry, you were saying?
except for that 1%. I said radar contacts setting themselves up
Sold.
quite well for the
Yes.
long term here. Thanks to teleportation, they're spread out. They don't have a lot of debt. It's really going to be Shell Cheesy versus Radar Contact. Cardarius might be able to play spoiler. We're just going to have to see. They've been lagging behind a little bit.
They got a
20.
really
A scavenger
favorable
HQ
claim
has been
auction. For
upgraded.
7,000, that's actually under what it would take to purchase a bribe claim. Most of the time, players will push it at minimum to what the current value of bribe claim is, if not another 10 grand
The
after
black
it.
market is open for business.
Yes. I mean, probably should have gone for somewhere in the high teens, the low 20s would be a fair price for a extra claim
Yeah.
on Mars. Given that everyone's debt's really good, you could see it actually go even higher.
Because again, you can win with debt. You can have a ton of debt and still win if you've got money. And that's what that claim's going to do for you.
Right. Like Shell Cheesy's not making that much money off of power. I'd trade $200 right now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
It's
Shell
a
Cheesy might not, but Radar Contact, on the other hand, definitely would pay north of 20 something for that extra claim.
So another thing is with robots, you can generally assume the price on power is going to go up. These two pleasure domes and this patent lab are all kind of power hogs. The dome's much more than the lab, but still. The demand is actually around. Most of the people appear to be trying to use. Let's see, I see Z-Ratchet's using wind. Two wind claims is not going to do it for you unless you have an optimization center and you've got cheap chems and a lot of time. And you probably don't have those things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we do have Cordarius moving into the first optimization center on HQ4.
I mean,
They
not a
need
bad move.
$73,000 to upgrade. They have 62 of it, but upgrading would put you in a little bit of a danger from majority buy from Radar Contact. So everyone's kind of in a holding pattern to see who's going to upgrade, if anyone else is going to upgrade.
Shell kind of figured out there on the menu, which, being up at level 5, they would be the natural choice for Radar Contact to try and buy out.
Well, they both Kidorius and Shell Cheesy have secured themselves, so now it's time for Radar Contact. Well, actually, no, Radar Contact's already
We
in
have a hard to
HQ5.
come by
Yeah,
land claim available to the highest bidder.
Radar is actually doing really well for themselves. Got teleportation, which is a strong move. I don't know how I feel about these chem labs on the carbon.
Yeah, I was just noticing that.
Yeah.
Right now, no one else is in chems, so it's okay. The problem is going to be when they need to rotate
Yes.
out of chems. And their other problem that they've been having right now is
Congratulations.
look how much they're still stockpiling all the life support resources, and everybody else is in those life support resources. Like
Yes.
Shell Cheesy's not auto selling them, but they have way less, so they're actually making the money off of these. Same for Cordarius. They are also selling them at a reasonably fast clip.
So when you've got 400 of fuel and fuel's $94 a unit, it's time to start, maybe not selling all the fuel because it's valuable. You can use it to make chems, you can use it to do lots of things, but maybe, yes, exactly.
Into some glass.
Hey.
Sure, you have to buy silicon off the market, but it's only $40 and glass is $300.
Yes, once you've got $100,000 to throw around, it's very difficult for the prices on the market to be the thing that's stopping you from making money. The difficult thing comes when opponents raise the prices to just make it so you're not making as much money. They can't drive you out of the business. They
The
can slow
other
you.
thing to think about is moving to an off-world.
Yes.
Because off-worlds give you $38,000 in pure profit per launch, and that's what Shell Cheesy is going to do. Moving into the first off-world market, they did switch out of their aluminum into solar panels,
A
so
robotics
that's always
HQ has
good.
been
They're
upgraded.
going to make good use of this really high power because there's not been enough power generated on the map. That's usually not something you say in a new player's game. Usually there's an overabundance of power, but probably something
Black
different
market
in
is
Off-World Trading
online.
Company, and that's what makes it fun to play.
That's right.
Z-Ratchet did finally get up to HQ3. They are finally starting to add some adjacency. which is always good to see. They have paid through all of their debt. They're actually making some decent power money off of these wind turbines in the dust storm. The only problem is they're 2 HQs behind.
Radar, I want to say, is going into a off-world. It's just a long, long way from the colony, so it's going to be a little while before it starts building, shows up.
Yeah, they are going into that off-world, and they are finally making glass somewhere. Oh, it is. They have a triangle of glass all the way over on the other side here.
New building is available
Now,
for auction.
I'm not sure why Z-Racket's deciding to make themselves a target.
Maybe what they're thinking, and this is something that you have to consider when you're in the large, the way behind in a free-for-all situation, probably not going to be the winner, is Cordaris there is probably going to lose. But I have a single piece of stock into them. So if I make it a little bit easier for Cordaris, who has a bunch of money, but probably not going to win, to get the buy, maybe they pull something together in the last second, whilst we all together handle the first 5 shares. Because while you do need to, in a situation where someone secured half of their stock, buy up all 5 shares at once at double price, which is a really painful thing to do, it's a little bit less painful if everybody besides Cordaris kind of shares that load, which is what you're actually seeing here, which is very nice for me.
So Radar Contact right now actually almost has the buy. If they sold everything
Yes.
and canceled this offload, they could shift by Cordaris.
And again, that's the downside of that plan.
Wouldn't it be a bad move for
No.
Radar
Market
Contact?
is assembled.
Cordaris has a fine spot now. I think the AI would be able to use it pretty effectively, even if Cordaris hasn't necessarily gotten the debt under control.
The Radar Contact's going to buy into Shell Cheesy, which is also another decent move. They finally have those off-worlds launching.
Realistically
They still have
speaking,
one claim to use.
Shell Cheesy is the threat. I mean, you compare stock prices, that does kind of make you want to buy Cordaris just because it would be good for you, but when you see how much Shell Cheesy has into Radar Contact as far as stock-wise, it's much better to get a hold of Shell Cheesy. When you look at the debt situation, it's better to get a hold of Shell Cheesy.
And Radar Contact does look to have a slight advantage in cash. They do have the slight disadvantage in stock price, though, being in C debts. They are going to need to look out for that long term. Z-Ratchet really should, sell out of these shares in Cordaris and just upgrade.
Yep.
At least to HQ4. 3 is just not enough claims to be able to do anything. You might have a chance at doing something at HQ4.
A robotics
But they've just
HQ has been
delayed
upgraded.
so much that they're unfortunately a little bit irrelevant here. Cordaris could play spoilers. They are going into an off-world. They're off-world. Still cost a lot of money to get in. Although it's kind of hard to tell the real price of off-worlds right now because everybody has huge stockpiles of construction resources.
One thing to consider is when these players start wanting to get aggressive with each other's off-worlds, which they definitely do, by the way, right now. Those network viruses are available. Those are something that you can actually kind of give your opponent, and as annoying as it is, mostly just makes it so you can't transition your buildings. If you're not in a negative, it's not going to do anything bad for you besides that. So those are what you want to use to knock off goon squads. They're only 3,000. A goon squad is 20,000. So that makes it really, really good to start getting aggressive. Because it's cheaper for you to attack than it is for them to continue to defend.
Really unfortunate for Shell Cheesy. They hit that mutiny button right after Z-Ratchet froze Radar Contact's awful.
Yeah, that does happen. And there we go. We start seeing network viruses coming down from Radar Contact onto Shell Cheesy.
Yeah, nobody went for thinking machines, which is a little bit of a mistake given the price of off-worlds. Also, Shell Cheesy, you do need to check about either twice a soul or at least once a soul what you're shipping, because you could be making $41,000 per launch instead of only 28.
This is a small thing, but these glass kilns from Shell Cheesy are a perfect example of a standard network virus target. You can see they're costing him $120 a second. That's not big in the scheme of off-world for only 2 buildings, but it's still, these would be the places where you want to use these network viruses, because this is where it's actually effective and hurting your opponent. That, or as something to knock off goon squads. Too many times I see people kind of confuse them for an EMP or a power surge and think that they're doing more than they're doing.
Yeah, network viruses can keep a building online,
Yes.
even if it's not making money, and prevent you from deleting it. But if your
black
opponent
market
is
is
keeping the
online.
building online anyway, when it's losing a lot of money, why bother?
Yes, that's very true. It's really just drawing
if
attention
you
to it.
do, like Shell Cheesy, we can click on it. We can see Shell Cheesy chose to turn on the
Off-road
automatic,
shipment
no,
launched.
turning off,
Look
right?
at all the
Just by
money.
looking at the tiles. So if you
Yeah.
do that, you need to pay good attention. Now, that being said, Shell Cheesy is getting really close in radar contact, 72% of the way there. Shell Cheesy needs
Let the bidding
$494,000. They have 363. Radar contact needs $572,000, and they only have 280.
Again, just not having the stock in themselves, having other players kind of assisting with Z-Ratchet, just giving that little bit of that lift that's not happening for radar contact when trying to buy Shell
Launch
Cheesy.
affirmative. What a payout.
These are things that can tilt these free-for-all games, even when you're in a situation like radar contact, where it feels like everything's going your way.
Right, so the mistake Radar Contact made is they had a lot of money, but they allowed in Shell Cheesy, when Shell Cheesy had less money, to get the drop on
Yeah.
Radar
We're not
Contact and buy the
surprised, just
first.
disappointed in you.
And then the second mistake that they made is they went into a second, like $150,000 off-world or whatever.
Yes.
Even at
The black
50K
market is
launches right
open for
now, which they
business.
haven't been always, that still takes 5 minutes to just pay for itself before it even starts making you any money.
One last thing is Shell Cheesy here went into that big geotherm investment, put down those solar panels, and now they are reaping the benefits of not being in any debt. They're the only ones who are capable of making power money right now, and they are making... Before nighttime it was 800, now it's only a modest 500 per second.
Successful off-road shipment.
They
Make
have the
room for
100 on
profits.
radar contact.
Oh, what is happening? What are we seeing?
Why? No.
So we have a rule set that says you aren't allowed to do that as conceding.
Well,
But they were actually... Yes.
They were trying to get greedy.
Yes. And I think that's... I just wanted to point out there's a gray area here where you could see Shell Cheesy was doing well enough that we're not... At least I personally, I don't know. But I don't feel comfortable calling that a concession. That was a mistake. They were trying to win.
They
Yeah.
were trying to win by selling out, but you can't.
You can't do
Selling out
that.
Set the what is it? The timer for buying for 6 seconds ish.
You have to be playing against someone who's really not paying attention for that to be a move.
Right, and radars purchased in your stock, they are lightning focused on you. Like that's the only two things radar's doing: looking at Shell Cheesy's base and looking at their base.
Yeah.
And looking at the buy button.
Yep.
It up. And they hit it.
All the money.
Yeah, when you see the big red button.
Unfortunately, Shell Cheesy there just snatched
Defeat from the jaws of victory.
The jaws of victory.
Yeah. Sorry,
Cooldown
Chell.
on stock buy, I think is
A
like
robotics
5 seconds.
HQ has been upgraded.
It's right around there.
It's really difficult, you know, from the observer's seat, it's all very chill. But when you're actually in the moment, even when you're in the lead, it is so nerve-wracking that things like this can happen.
I was momentarily confused when all of a sudden Cordarius had 100% of Shell Cheesy, and I was like, what? That being said, Cordarius is actually in a decent amount of money. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
because Radar Contact got Shell Cheesy for next to nothing, Radar Contact's just going to buy them out. If Shell Cheesy and Radar Contact had went against each other like a standard sort of play and had, had needed to spend $500,000 to purchase out one of the others,
Yes, it would be a closer
Cordarius,
situation for the two players remaining.
right. Cordarius might be able to make a run for it. Unfortunately, radar contact's just going to wait for all these off-worlds to finish launching, and then they're going to hit that buy button on Cordarius. They
Not
could do it right
much
now, but
stopping them from just playing it safe.
now is where, as radar contact, you could sell out of your 3 stocks, not 4,
Yes.
just to speed up the buy on Z Ratchet, who has gotten up to HQ5 and put that on off-world while we were commentating on the race between radar contact
For
and Shell
Successful
Cheesy.
off-world
But
shipment.
unfortunately,
Make
those
room for the
mistakes that we
profits.
pointed out earlier, the found location, the going 111 and random stuff, power in HQ1 just puts you too far behind to be competitive.
yeah. Yeah.
And that radar contact actually does have a reason to sell out of their own shares because we do use time-based tiebreakers in these new player tournaments.
That's
Since
true.
we don't know who's second, third, or fourth place, that's kind of the best you can do at the moment. Or the least worst option.
For players who are maybe brand new to Offworld, and this is the first time you're ever seeing it, this little panel here in the top right is actually the most important part of the user interface because this is where you win the game. You can actually you can be the best Offworld player there's ever been,
Off-world
and you could
shipment
have
launched.
300 times
You'll
as much
get all
money as
the
your opponent,
money.
and they could still technically beat you if you refuse to look in the top right and recognize the buy button exists and that you need to purchase shares to win. So,
Radar contact does take it. It was very touch and go there
yes,
for a second because it looked like Shell Cheesy was going to get the buy on them, but one little mistake can cost you the game in Offworld Trading Company, and that's what we saw here today.
that's correct. That is very correct. So yeah, might sell 3 stock because if you have 5, that's half, and at that majority, you're secured unless someone can take all 5 of you at once, which
Right. So here's how the stock game works for anybody who's new. Is a share that doesn't have anybody who's bought it can be bought by anyone for the normal price. Once the
yes.
person's company who it is purchases a share, the next person has to pay double to get that stock. If you have all 5 of them, you'll notice that they turn into one single blip or pip. You
And
have
there's
to
a little
purchase
lock.
all 5 of them at once in
Yes.
order to get that. So essentially, you're paying and that's double price.
And so
So
when we
when
talk about
Radar
picking Shell Cheesy up so cheaply, it's because they
cheaply,
actually sold out of their stock, which they gave them money, but in return they were no longer secure, and the radar contact was able to purchase 6 shares into him. And once you have 6 shares into someone, you own their company because there's only 10 shares, and you own a true majority. So yeah,
yeah, I mean, until then, Shell Cheese is doing pretty well. They made what was it, $360,000 in power. It's pretty good.
yeah,
Very good power money.
they had it. I think they may have actually had 100% when they decided to take that
If
sell.
they were at 100%, they just didn't sell down all of their what is it,
Resources
resources
is the word
and cancel
sometimes.
off-world
Yeah.
instead. Or just wait for the off-world to finish launching and sell down all your resources. That's one of the that's one of the reasons why we do harp on that stockpile a little bit, is
Yes.
because if you are neck and neck with somebody and you have a stockpile of resources, that's cash, illiquid cash that you can't use to purchase that.
And more to the point, this is when you get into some of the more advanced stuff. If you both have a huge stockpile of the same valuable resource, the first person to collapse that price gets the better of it. And
Yep.
if you can sell out everything you've got, which there is a shortcut for, I think it's like Control Alt and down on the little market
I
arrow.
recommend changing it to something easier to hit.
Yeah, that how much you want to
But
customize is up to you.
we were all the games have finished, so
Okay.
let's back out of this one. We'll put up the lobby for game number 3,
Yes.
and